Hi, ladies. Welcome back to my channel. So, I want to address the clip that's circulating. It's gone viral between Shannon Sharp and Ryan. I can't remember his last name, and I don't really care to double check. Where Ryan, he's a comedian, pretty much went on the podcast and said that he felt as if his daughter, his 11-year-old daughter, is a gold digger because the only time that she wants to be around him is if he has money, and that it makes him feel less than. One thing, if you haven't noticed by now, I have a soft spot for children, especially Black girls, because children are vulnerable, and a lot of Black women go through what they go through because of what happened to them during childhood. And so part of the reason why I do what I do is with hopes that the adults who are listening can correct the behavior that they were taught as a child and be able to properly raise the next generation of young Black girls that are coming up, but also any young Black women who are coming up and they still have their whole life ahead of them, that they're able to heal from the damages that are prevalent in the Black community. And I also want to say to Ryan's point about his daughter only wanting to be around him because of money and whatever, she's considered an adolescent. She's in her preteen years. She's 11 years old. So she's at that point in her life where she's starting to form her identity as an adolescent. So that period before you become an adult and you form your own identity, you establish self-actualization, you start to detach from the socialization of your family and the community that you grew up with as a child, and you start to kind of form your own individual identity as a human being. And a part of that, if you can think back to when you were 11, 12, 13, 14, you wanted to spend less time with your parents in general, and you wanted to spend more time with your friends because you were in that prepubescent era of your life, for many pubescent era of your life, where you were forming your identity. And with that often comes not only wanting to spend less time with your parents, but wanting to spend more time with your friends, not because you hate your parents, but because you want to be with your friends. You think that your friends are cool, what they're doing, you want to do, so that it helps to, whether they're aware of it or not, form your likes and your dislikes as an individual. But it also comes with a lot of resistance and rebelling. When you are a teenager, they consider teenage years to be probably the most difficult era of the child's life because they have a lot more autonomy. They can stand up for themselves. They can speak up. In some cases, they can fight back. You can't control their movement. Whereas before, if your child were to speak up and rebel, you'd put them in timeout until, they got over themselves. Now, your kid can go to school and decide, I'm not going to come home after school because I want to stay back and watch the basketball game with my friends. And you told them that they need to be in the house by whatever time, and they decided they want to go past that. You have very little control over that because they have ways to finesse you emotionally. And unfortunately, and this is not true for every child, like there's different degrees, it varies as to how much you rebel and resist. But this is a natural process of being a preteen and a teenager and figuring out who you are as an individual. And I'm pretty sure Ryan can relate if he's being honest with himself and if he takes a minute to think back to how he was when he was 11 and entering his teenage years, right? And when you get into that stage of your life as a preteen, that's when you start to be curious about makeup and doing your hair and different forms of fashion, all these little trends that kids like. I don't know what kids are into these days aside from maybe getting a new iPhone. I don't know what else, maybe Roblox. This is a time where they want to experiment with these different things as a form of self-actualization, and that requires money. So it's almost like he's far removed from reality, where now that he's a grown man and he's now in the parent role, he forgot that he probably put his parents or parent through the same thing when he was a preteen and teenager. And if his daughter decides to have children, her children will put her more than likely through the same thing. Of course, again, there's varying degrees, because that is what every single preteen and teenager does as they go through life. But then there's going to come a time where as she gets out of those teenage years and she gets into her 20s and she matures a little bit mentally and emotionally, where she's going to value, if he is raising her correctly, she's going to value and yearn for a close relationship again with her parents, right? We've all been through it where it's like, oh, my parents are always trying to hold me back and tell me what to do. And then once you kind of get over yourself and you get into your early 20s, you're like, you know what? My mom was right about those girls. They really aren't my friends. Or you know what? My dad was right about boys. I should listen to them sometimes. Now that you've formed your identity and you have a better understanding of who you are, you have less resistance to authority because you understand and you realize that authority, for the most part, is there to protect you and help you. And I'm not going to stitch the video because I don't want to get flagged by YouTube, but you can go on TikTok and wherever else and you can find it there. I wanted to point out something as to why what Ryan said was harmful, because it perpetuates the idea that when a woman, but in particular, I'm talking about a Black woman because this channel is for Black identified women, but it can relate to whoever it relates to. When a woman asks for something in a relationship, in a work setting, whatever, even sometimes things that are pertinent to her basic needs, if she vocalizes her needs, she is often labeled as masculine, presumptuous, arrogant, needy even. And oftentimes she is humbled and silenced by being told, be grateful with what you have. Don't ask for too much, even if she really doesn't have enough. And so even if her parents never verbally say this, Ryan calling her a gold digger at 11 years old as if she's some random streetwalker will really ingrain in her mind and into the minds of probably millions of people who are watching this that an 11-year-old girl is unworthy of asking for the basic needs that a parent is responsible for giving her. And I'm going to speak to that point later on as it pertains to parents, the common trend of Black people having children that they cannot care for, and why that further perpetuates this insecurity in Black women. But I just wanted to go back for a second to a point that Ryan made about his daughter. He said that she saved his life, and he realized that when he went to go get the ultrasound with his baby mom, and they realized that they were having a girl, he said that he couldn't be a mediocre man anymore, which means that he was not ready financially and probably emotionally and mentally to care for this child because he did not set up his life in a way where he could take on another living, breathing human being, which is a common case, if we're honest, for a lot of Black children, which is why around 70% of Black children are born in single parent households, because the parents go and they have a good time. They're not really thinking, they know and they're aware of their financial situation and just the precarious living situation for a lot of them. But instead of, saying, let me get my money up or whatever, let me be careful while I go and have fun, they just recklessly go and sleep with whoever, get pregnant, have the child, and then reality hits them like, oh shoot, like this child actually costs money. It's not a cute little plushie that I can just prop up in the corner. This child needs formula, diapers, clothing, medicine, everything, and I can't afford it. Which it sounds like that is a reality for him. And he's probably still in that same financial predicament where he doesn't have enough money to keep up with the demands of being able to provide for a preteen and teenager in the way that I mentioned before, because while her friends are getting the latest iPhone, they're getting, I don't know what kids like to wear today, but they're getting that. And she's thinking like, oh, as part of my socialization, like this is what I should want as well. Who do I look to provide for that? That would be my mom and dad. Daddy, can you give me some money so I can go and buy Roblox, or I can go and, don't laugh guys, I have no idea. I don't have any kids, so I have no idea what kids want, because that's what her friends want. And so she's socialized to believe that that is what she should want as well. Or maybe she genuinely likes it. But because it sounds like he is not able to provide that for his child, he's calling her a gold digger. Maybe he thought that he was going to make it big in comedy, but unfortunately it didn't take off. Now he's on the internet talking shit and calling his daughter, his 11-year-old child, who he has an obligation, a legal and a moral obligation to care for, he's calling her a gold digger because he's not willing to provide anything more than food, clothing, and shelter. And maybe even the clothing part is a gripe for him because, again, going to Walmart or Target and buying cute little outfits are not going to cut it anymore as you start entering middle school and high school. So when he said that his daughter healed him, his daughter saved him, this is a common talking point that a lot of Black parents have, where they're going through something, maybe financially, emotionally, maybe their life is not going the way that they want to, and they're in a relationship maybe that's not going well, and they think, okay, let's have a child. The child, a baby always brings joy and happiness. Let's go ahead and have this child, even though we both know that we can't afford it, and even though we both know that we're not in a good position in our relationship to have one. We're fighting all the time. We actually don't like each other. Let's go ahead and have this child to temporarily fill that emotional void and hope that maybe magically everything's going to work out. And if you are in the Black community, even if you end up getting pregnant unplanned, you're often told by your family members and your church to go ahead and have the child, and we'll help you raise the child. But then when it comes time to, hey, I need money to buy some diapers, nobody has it, which, in all honesty, it's not anybody's responsibility to help you pay for the child that you decided to have. But a lot of Black women in particular fall for the okie doke where they're told that, yeah, go and have your child. It's your duty as a woman to make sure that you birth a child, especially before 30. Go ahead and do it. But then when you need a sitter, when you need you're freshly postpartum and you feel like shit, nobody is there to support you. So then the mask and the veil falls off, and then the resentment starts to build, and it presents itself sometimes not as overtly as Ryan, but in a lot of cases, now you're increasingly starting to hear more parents complain about how much they wish they didn't have their kid. You'll hear a lot of Black men online talking about how they just simply abandon their children because being a parent is ghetto, as they said. Rather than doing the rudimentary work to become a better adult, fully functioning adult, like getting a real job, going to therapy, stop engaging in unhealthy relationships with bad people, you kind of just continue to engage in these risky behaviors. You have the child, and then your resentment because of your poor life choices are projected onto the child, and they now have to carry the label and shame of not being worthy because you couldn't get your shit together. And honestly, it sounds like Ryan has a gripe with his baby mom and other women who wouldn't date him because he is broke, it sounds like. And, rather than doing like what a man should do, maybe he was hoping again to go big, like maybe Kevin Hart as a comedian, but unfortunately didn't take off that way. Rather than him going and finding a job to take care of himself and his child, who again, he has a responsibility to take care for, he's sitting on the internet whining and complaining and talking shit and projecting his insecurities onto his daughter for the world to see. And as an extension, others will see this interview and use it as permission to mistreat his daughter and tell her and their own children and tell her and them that they are unworthy of receiving their basic needs. They're unworthy of living outside of survival mode. So being able to have access to experiences that honestly the average person in a first world country has access to, like being able to take family vacations. These basic things that we allocate to the American dream that other races of people, other communities are actively and responsibly working towards to give their kids, Black people are still stuck at the bottom. Black people are still not even at the basic level of, okay, we are both fully functioning adults, financially, mentally, emotionally. Okay, now we are in a position where we can take care of a child. Let's go ahead and get married and do that. Black people are not even there yet. And Black people are surprised that there's still this large wealth disparity between the Black community and other races. And they will often, instead of being honest with themselves and doing the inner work to make sure that they're ready to have children that they can properly care for, not just financially, but emotionally, they attribute it to, racism and slavery. When it's like, no, you just simply perpetuate the generational cycle of making bad decisions, of being irresponsible. And so as his daughter continues to grow up and develop her sense of self, develop what Sigmund Freud calls the superego, which controls someone's internalized standards. So these internalized standards, they develop from identifying with your parents and absorbing their moral codes. It also helps you to process rewards and punishment. So from how you are socialized, behaviors that are rewarded, you will tend to repeat that. And behaviors that are punished, even if you did nothing wrong, you are more likely to not do that because you don't want to be punished again. And so, as an example, if Ryan's daughter is told that asking for her basic needs, asking for provision is something that is bad, and she is thereby punished for it, punishment doesn't have to be as extreme as physical violence. It can simply be told to shut up or don't ask or be grateful for what you have, or I don't know, being called a gold digger on social media. She's then going to not do that. The superego in her mind, the ego ideal, her conscience, is going to tell her, oh, shoot, don't ask for a promotion at work because you don't want to be punished for asking for basic needs, even though you've been putting in the work and delivering, and the company has received high profits this year and can more than afford to give it to you. Don't confront your partner when he cheated on you. Just silently take it and be grateful that you were able to find a good Black man to be in a relationship with you. And that if you leave, maybe you won't find someone who is willing to be in a healthy relationship with you. So quietly just stick it out and hope for the best. Hope that it will change. These are common behaviors and mindsets that a lot of Black women have that they then pass on to their children through the men that they procreate with and through their own socialization that they project onto their children. And one thing as an aside that I notice is that men will shame women for having daddy issues or from coming from single parent households as if that's something that a woman can control, you know, the reality that she was born into, but will turn around and say things like what Ryan said and will also entertain those talking points or simply laugh it off and turn a blind eye like what Shannon did, as if this comment was harmless. And Black men will also defend this behavior because, let's face it, men like Shannon with his platform and his guests, that is their only form of representation, whereas men with podcasts and talk shows, like that's typically considered a feminine trait, having a talk show. So that's why you see other races and groups. If you are considered a man with a podcast, you're either gay or you're just simply not taken seriously in that community. They don't uphold these people as the moral compass for which society should model their behavior and their thoughts after. They're kind of just on the outskirts of society doing their thing. I mean, if you make it big, great, wow, you made it. But, you know, think of like prominent white male podcaster. None of them are really taken seriously. People may listen to them and laugh at it for entertainment. No one is taking them seriously, let's be honest. Because in other groups, there are much more meaningful and prominent forms of representation for which their society and their community can attribute their moral compass to. And the younger generation can look up to and aspire to. You know, doctors, scientists, entrepreneurs, people going into space. Like, it's like, why would you limit yourself to just someone and their own opinion, which is often a controversial opinion so that they can get clicks and views, when you can actually aspire to be like someone who is doing something much more meaningful? Not only will it give us and our community notoriety and social currency, but it will actually give you wealth and millions so that you don't have to live in survival mode anymore. You can actually live a fulfilling life of abundance, which is what each generation should aspire to give to the next generation. The next generation should be better than the last, and they can only do that if they are building from a foundation, a strong, solid foundation. They shouldn't be starting from scratch every single time, which is the reality for most Black children. Even if they come from wealthy, well-to-do Black families, a lot of times that wealth is lost and they have to start from nothing. And it comes from this scarcity mindset that we hear Ryan and even Shannon speaking about, where because you think that you're unworthy and because you are operating from a place of lack and survival, you tell your children that they too, this is the natural way for us. Other races may be able to make it, but you as a Black person, you have to get it out the mud. Otherwise, you're spoiled and you're entitled and you can't relate to the Black struggle, which no, I can't relate to the Black struggle. I don't relate to struggle at all. And Shannon, I'm not surprised that he didn't correct this behavior because he also co-signs this. Once he stated that he refused to pay for his daughter's wedding, and he kind of alluded to not wanting to pass on anything to his children. And there have been other prominent leaders or figures, if you will, in the Black community who have said similar things like that. That is a type of mentality where a lot of Black parents want their kids to struggle like they did. Even if they don't admit it, it's like, oh, it will help you develop character and it'll teach you how to work for a dollar and be able to appreciate a dollar. When let's face it, they're more than willing. If you know, especially if you're from the Caribbean or Africa, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, where you will ask your parents for something and they'll say no, but then they're very, very quick to go and help other people's children. Number one, that has to do with keeping up appearances to make it seem like you got it like that. It also, if we're being honest, comes down to your parents wanting to see you struggle the way that they did. And it's not true for every Caribbean and African family. There's no rational explanation as to why you would deny your child something very simple that they asked for that would give them happiness, but you're very, very quick to go and help someone else's kid go to a private school back home. A lot of Black parents think in the diaspora, wherever, they think that if it's not your immediate need, that there's no worth or value into you having it. And so you're conditioned to live life where as long as you're getting the bare minimum, that's good enough. But then you go ahead and you go above and beyond, where you feel as if you have to work twice as hard to get any sort of admiration or approval from your parents when they should be giving that to you unconditionally because they chose to have you. You had nothing to do with their decision for you to be born, right? And so as an extension, they should be catering to that very basic hierarchy of needs. And you can just forget about self-esteem and self-actualization because those basic needs are taken care of. And caring about your mental health, your self-esteem, self-actualization, that's for white people. But then Black parents will wonder why their children struggle to perform on the same level as other races of children, white children, even if they had the same upbringing. Because let's face it, not every Black child was born and raised in the ghetto. A lot of Black children went to private schools. And so they don't have the rough and tough experience of the average child, inner city child. But a lot of Black parents, for whatever reason, they can't let go of the survival mode instinct, even though they're no longer in survival mode, even though many of them still make well over six figures. These are things that the haves are teaching their kids versus the have-nots. The haves are teaching their kids, always ask questions at school. Always ask to do an additional assignment so that you can get extra credit. If you know that you were not graded fairly, always challenge it or tell me so that I can speak to the teacher. Don't just quietly sit there and take it when you know that you've been treated unfairly as it pertains to your grades. All of these things from childhood lead up to how we show up as adults. And if you are an adult who some of what I've said resonates with you and you see it carrying into how you perceive the world, how you show up in relationships, and what you accept from romantic partners or even in your workforce, I suggest that you go to therapy to get this undone. But you also need to get away from the Black community. I've said this time and time again, stay away from the Black collective because the Black collective is still operating in survival mode. And in 2026, you need to be thriving. You need to be the type of mentality that requires you to actually survive, requires you to not have a survival mode mentality where you're just scraping by, you're just scrounging for little pennies here and there and loose change and breadcrumbs, but you're finding a way where you're able to have self-actualization, which would then propel you to a place in life where you have abundance and you can actually thrive in life. And not have to worry about eviction, not have to worry about if I get laid off, what the hell am I going to do for money? How am I going to get a new job? The job market's so competitive. Because you've developed the skills and the type of mindset to help you thrive, which will then, at the very basic, help with your basic survival needs. And as an aside, I need Black women to lock your wombs and stop procreating with these losers. I'm not surprised that he said this. I bet there were probably things that he said to his daughter's mom that signal that he's this type of man. He probably didn't pay for dates. He probably didn't take her out on any dates. He was probably broke as hell when she decided to allow him to get her pregnant. Men like this, their bloodline does not deserve to live on if they're not able to provide you with the basic needs. Okay, this is basic natural selection that is practiced in the animal kingdom. People will say, oh, that's eugenic and that's not fair. Like, you shouldn't judge people by their ability to provide. But if you live in a first world country, I'm not even talking about people who literally have nothing and they live in like the trenches of some country they don't even have running water. I'm talking about you live in a first world country like United States, England, Canada, wherever. Unless you were laying up in a hospital bed somewhere and couldn't take care of yourself, you have zero excuse. And it all comes down to, again, your life choices that you made as an adult. And if you are making bad choices, it is incumbent upon you, especially if you have children, to correct those choices so that this cycle of poverty does not continue. Many of you say that you care about the advancement of the Black community, but you actually don't, because if you did, you would not be engaging in the same harmful behaviors and mindsets that cause Black children to be raised in poverty. So as a woman, not even for the sake of your children, but for the sake of your own well-being, natural selection is your friend. Do not procreate with a man who does not have the resources to make sure that you're good while you're pregnant, because you're going to be relying on him and his resources to take care of you while you are recovering and you're out of work. And if you don't have access to maternity leave, you should be with someone who can take care of you, where you can say, you know what, I'm going to take some time off so that I can heal properly and I don't have to go through postpartum depression because I'm not giving my body the time that it needs to actually heal. That's what contributes to postpartum depression, by the way. And I can actually raise my child and afford to send my kid to daycare and then be able to go back to the workforce. I don't have to rush after a month after just giving birth. For some women, they don't even have that luxury, for lack of a better word. They have to pop the kid out and go back to work the next day or whenever else. And many women, they fall short and they cut corners and they go for men who they think they love because they don't want to be alone, or they want to be married and have a child by 30. They're tired of being single, as if singleness is a curse. And they go and they jump into the nearest man who will take them and give him children. And he's made it very clear that he has no intention. He does not have the means to care for a child, and he has no intention of doing so. Because if he did, he wouldn't be sitting around complaining about how broke he is. And some of these guys, they don't even complain about being broke because they know that you'll take care of everything. They know that you'll go to work and he'll get to stay home and drive your car and sit down and play PS5 all day. So of course they have no incentive to be better. But when you start choosing better, or choosing, because let's face it, there aren't that many better options out there. So when you choose to cut off access completely from these men, if that means that a generation has to be lost, so be it. You should, as a mother and as an adult, you should decide within yourself that you are not going to raise a child in poverty. You are willing to take the risk for your well-being and your future children's well-being and say, no, I'm cutting off access. If I can't get someone who's going to provide the emotional, financial care that is needed to raise a self-actualizing, healthy, productive human being, then I'm cutting off access. That's something that animals do in the animal kingdom, but for some reason, human beings think that it doesn't apply to them too. And for those of you who are religious, it's even biblical. The Bible says that a man who doesn't provide for his family is worse than an unbeliever. I didn't say that. The God that you pray to and you don't even listen to everything that he says clearly, he's the one who said that. But because Black women desire Black men's attention so badly, let's just face it, and women in general desire men's validation, regardless of race, they go and they have children with anyone who gives them attention. So please do not let this be you. Make better choices. Be willing to make the necessary sacrifices, not only for your well-being, but for the well-being of the children that you're going to be birthing into existence, so that they don't have to deal with the emotional and psychological backlash that comes from having a father like this. So that your kids will not grow up to resent you for giving them such a subpar father and raising them in such an unstable household. Anyway, these are my thoughts on the topic. Let me know what you think down below in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.